let me lay the groundwork for what to expect with college basketball this season. Some notes on how this sport is going to be at large this year. This is a pretty wide open year. There are a lot of really, really good teams. I don't know that there are a lot of guaranteed great teams. The top of the sport reflects the top of the polls, analytics services, whatever you're after. You'll see Purdue and Houston primarily in sort of a 1A, 1B tier at the top. The sportsbook odds certainly reflect that. Purdue just under 10-1 to win the national title. Houston right at 10-1 to win the national title. Our model favors Purdue by about half a percentage point. But the important thing to call out for me, both these teams right around 6% likelihood to win a national championship, not necessarily in a tier of their own. I mean, 2%, maybe 1.5% higher than that third team, Duke, there down the list. But this is not a situation where the Dimers model reflects two teams that are going to be toe and toe ahead of everybody else in the sport. I think it's a pretty wide open year. We saw a lot of parity last year at times, but this year it really is a sport where I think there's roughly 15 teams that could end up finding themselves with a legitimate chance to win the national championship at the end of the year, which means from a futures perspective, my favorite way to approach this is look for some teams that are undervalued. And you think back one season ago, the eventual national champion Florida Gators were as deep as 60-1 at early points of last season before skyrocketing up the ranks and dominating in SEC play. I think you could see a season similar, maybe not a team as long as 60-1, but some teams around 20-1 or even further that have caught my attention. As far as storylines go for the sport as well, just want to note this freshman class is historically great. It's a three-man race of three-man NBA superstars in the future that are captaining their various teams. Cameron Boozer at Duke had a 24-rebound game in one of the exhibitions against Tennessee, historically one of the more physical rebounding programs that you'll find in college hoops. Boozer's a 6'11" point forward. He's going to take the Cooper Flag role and really deliver at the same level. And yes, that is the Boozer you're thinking of, Carlos Boozer's son, Cameron Boozer at Duke. Beyond him, you've got A.J. DeBonce at BYU, who's a sensational athlete, a freak talent. And then Darren Peterson, who draws Kobe Bryant comparisons from smart NBA draft people, calling him the most complete guard prospect we have seen in over 20 years. He's at Kansas. You'll see as you look at our model here, BYU down around 9th or 10th, most likely national champion. Kansas outside of that top 10. If you want to buy in to the idea that these sensational freshmen could translate to winning in championships and leadership and taking their teams there could be some value there. For me, I have a couple other teams that have caught my eye early on in the season that I want to shout out. So I will say for now, if you look on the site, we have just futures probabilities to win the national championship. I do believe as we get a little bit more data, it will be able to segment by conference. Hopefully we'll be able to speak to some of that as the season goes on. But for now, I'm mostly just going to look at the odds to win the national championship, and I'll give you three teams that I'm keeping an eye on. Some of these may have some value in lesser plays just to win their conference as well. But I want to start with the one that reminds me the most of Florida last season. It is Illinois all the way down at 40-1 to win the national championship. Now, Illinois, our model gives them a 2.3% probability, but that's really less than 0.5% away from teams that are priced at 22, 25-1, 27-1. You're catching 40-1. I think it's a pretty legitimate value play. Illinois' approach to roster building this year is quite unique. They have three different Balkan international players that are between 20, seriously, between 20 and 23 years old. And they've just exploited this loophole at this weird time in college basketball where professional basketball players can be eligible to play college basketball and be classified as a sophomore. It's worked, and they've built this insane roster full of them, mixed in with a couple American players, veterans that have been around the block like Kylan Boswell and Andres Stojakovic. So I love Illinois. They are passing the eye test right now. They hung over 100 points in their debut, and they're missing 2 key members of their team. The analytics have loved them. Ken Pomeroy, which is a site we always like to look at from a prognostication standpoint in the college basketball world. Ken Pom has had Illinois as his 6th best team in the country since before the season started. They're up to 5th after their first game, being priced in the sports books as the 20th best team. 20th most likely national champion. Our model shows some value as well. I think Illinois 40-1 is the long shot you need to bet before the season begins. There's also value on them to win the Big Ten because, as you'll note, they're in the same league as Purdue, who's at the very top of this list, the most likely national champion. So if you are buying Illinois, you want to take something that's a little bit safer, a little more likely probability-wise than winning the national championship, you can back them to win the Big Ten and get a pretty good price there as well. I'll shout out 2 more quick ones here, and one is in the SEC. It's at the top of this list and our 5 spot in terms of likelihood here. Kentucky with just over a 4% probability to win the national championship at 18-1. That's better odds than a couple other teams that also have a 4% probability right around them. Duke at 14-1, UConn at 17-1. Keep in mind, Kentucky, it's an exhibition, but they played Purdue last week in a highly watched, televised, sellout exhibition in Rupp Arena in Lexington. Kentucky, without their starting point guard, without their starting center, stomped Purdue by 13 points and controlled that game, was up by as much as 20. Purdue was at full strength. Kentucky was not, and they looked that good. They spent more money on their roster than anybody else in the sports. Year 2 of Mark Pope. He was a big game coach last year. I think this may be the only time this season you see Kentucky at 18-1 odds if their season goes how I forecasted to. And then one last one to shout out. The UConn Huskies have been the dominant program in the sport for roughly 3 seasons. Last year was a bit of a down year, 2 national championships in a row before it. UConn priced 4th most likely here by our estimation, but the same price as a Michigan in the sports book, 17-1 with over a 0.5% more likelihood according to our model. UConn, notably, this is important to me. They're in the Big East, which is a weaker conference in the sport this year compared to Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, even a Duke in the ACC, some of these teams that have a high likelihood here. UConn's going to run through their conference much easier than the others. They'll have a great chance to earn the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament because they will be stacking up wins along the way. Seeding really matters. When you get to the point where you just have to win 6 straight games in March to cut down the nets, I think UConn has a baked-in advantage this year that may not be showing in preseason models or valued by the sports books. At 17-1, I think that's worth a shot. So 2 more middle-of-the-pack teams here, UConn and Kentucky, both really double the odds of the favorite here, Purdue, while only being less than 2% away from our likelihood in terms of probabilities with the model. And then a long shot in Illinois at 40-1. That's a price I think we will look back on and think is crazy as little as a few weeks from now.
Thank you, Greg. Great insights as always. I'll be getting on all 3 of these teams, although I'll have to leave the lovely state of Connecticut to get UConn, as I am forbidden from within these borders.
We'll just attach you to Jace's next flight home to Australia, and you can
amen.
Take advantage of all these markets. Like Illinois with all their Balkans, we just have a team of Australians whenever we need it, hoping to power up championships. All right. Thank you for indulging me with college basketball. Hopefully I'll have more updates for you as the season unfolds.